all-inclusive current affairs for prelims 2021 polity class number 1. This video is in English. अगर आपको हिंदी ऑडियो वाली वीडियो चाहिए तो वो भी हमारे YouTube चैनल पे अवेलेबल है. Basic structure of Constitution. Recently, Keshwanand Bharti passed away. UPSC can frame questions on right to property, basic structure, judicial review and Article 13, constitutional amendments, the ninth schedule and the Coelho case. So, is right to property a fundamental right? It was, but not now. Before the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978, Constitution said that right to property is a fundamental right. But after this amendment, Constitution says that you have right to property, but it is only a legal right. How did this happen? See, originally the Constitution had Articles 19F and 31. These two articles said that right to property is your fundamental right because these two articles are part of part 3, that is the fundamental rights part. But in that also it was written that for public purpose government can take away your property. However, government will have to compulsorily compensate you for the same. Right? Now with this amendment, 44th Amendment 1978, these two articles which were a part of the part 3 of the Constitution, they were removed. They were removed from the fundamental rights. Rather, a new article was inserted, Article 300A. Now Article 300A says that no person shall be deprived of his property. So this line is giving you the right to property, right? Save by authority of law. However, by law, this right to property can be taken away. Right? How can it be taken away? It can be taken away by law. That is, this Article 300A protects your property against executive action. It does not protect you against legislative action. For example, if a flyover has to be constructed and suppose a flyover has to be constructed for which this much land is required, right? So your house comes here and government wants to acquire that house, that property. So if government takes an executive action, if government issues a notice that we are going to purchase this property, then you can approach the court. However, if government makes a law, okay, parliament passes a law that these houses have to be acquired, then you can't challenge it. You can't say that my right is being violated, because now Constitution says that by law your right to property can be taken away, right? Now, will the compensation be given to you? Not necessary. In the original Constitution, it was written that compensation is necessary. However, now the compensation is not necessary. There are some other articles like Article 30 and 31A, which have provisions for compulsory compensation. Article 30 says that if the property that was acquired was of minority educational institution, then the compensation is necessary. And Article 31A says that if the property was under personal cultivation. These are the only two scenarios when compensation is compulsory. Otherwise, government may or may not give the compensation. Article 31A was inserted by the First Amendment Act 1951. There is also a related concept of adverse possession. So the adverse possession was in news. Let me tell you a brief background of it. So there was a case of I think Himachal Pradesh. Let us say this is Himachal Pradesh, and there was a small property of a person. Around 40 years ago, government took over a good part of this property. Okay, a good part of this property, government took over to make some road. Now the owner of the property thought that fine, it is the government. Like government can do anything. So if government has taken away my property, I really can't do anything about it. He was not aware of his rights, so he kept quiet. After many years, he came to know about his rights, that government cannot take away your property like this, and if government has taken away, then you have the right to compensation. Right? Actually, that thing happened even before this act. Okay, it's a very old case. So government has to give you the compensation at least. Government can't take away your property like this. When this person came to know about this thing, Lot of time had passed. He put up a case in the court. Now the ruling has come from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that you should compensate the person. Government argued in the court that since the property has been under government's control for 12 years, therefore that property is now of the government. Okay, this is adverse possession. It mainly says that if there is a property and you are the owner, okay, you are the owner of that property, but for some reason some other person was occupying this property. This is some other person. This some other person was occupying this property for 12 years, and during those 12 years you never protested. Okay, you never protested his occupancy of this property. So now this property will be this person's and not yours. If someone is illegally occupying your property and you are not protesting for 12 years, then you lose the right to your property. Okay, this is adverse possession. Now it may sound very unjust. Okay, this is wrong. How can such a doctrine be there? But it has a very strong logic behind it. The logic is, suppose this is your home. Okay, it is a plot. Your house is constructed on this. You are living here, and someone asks you that is this your house? Please prove. Show us the proof that this is your house. If you have purchased this house recently, you will have the papers. Okay, you have the papers for this to prove. However, think of the scenario around 50 years ago today, like around independence. So at that time, someone asks you that please prove that this house you are living in is your house only. How will you prove? You will say that my ancestors for last how many centuries they have been living here continuously. I don't have any papers to prove it, but I am occupying this for hundreds of years. So should you be evacuated from here? No, it is your house only. Just because you don't have the papers does not mean that you will be evacuated, right? So therefore government brought this adverse possession doctrine, which says that if you are in possession of a property for 12 years and nobody protested against this, then we will assume that you are the rightful owner of this property, right? So it's a necessity. Adverse possession doctrine is a necessity. Now let's see a previous year question. Article 301 pertains to right to property. Wrong. It is Article 300A that is about right to property. Second sentence. Right to property is a legal right. Correct. But it is not a fundamental right. Correct. Third sentence. Article 300A was inserted by 44th Amendment. Correct. But was it inserted by the Congress government? No. It was inserted by Janata Party. Amendment of Constitution. Most of the articles of the Constitution can be amended by special majority under Article 368. However, some articles which have implications for the federal features of the Constitution, they need ratification by 50% of the states, but the states have to ratify with simple majority. Okay, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have to pass the bill by special majority, but the states have to pass the bill by simple majority. When half of the states pass the bill by simple majority, then the bill becomes an act. What are some of such provisions? Schedule 4, allocation of seats in Rajya Sabha. Schedule 7, the 3 lists. The process of president's election, the Goods and Services Tax Council, etc. There are some other amendments to the Constitution which can be done without Article 368. Some amendments don't need special majority of Article 368. For example, if you want to change anything in the Schedule 2 or Schedule 5 and 6, any such thing, creation of a new state, alteration of name of the boundaries, create or abolish state legislative councils, change the quorum in the parliament, salaries of MPs, increase the power of Supreme Court. For these things, Parliament does not need special majority. A simple majority, by a simple majority, amendment of the Constitution can be done. Okay, so UPSC can ask, UPSC will list some of these things and say for which among the following Parliament can amend the Constitution by a simple majority. You will have to identify. Question can also be asked about Schedule 2. Schedule 2 is about emoluments, etc. of top people of executive, legislature and judiciary and the CAG, both at the center and at the state. That is, in the center, the highest person in the executive is the president. In the state, it is the governor. In case of legislature, in the center there are speaker or deputy speaker of Lok Sabha, chairman and deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha. Similarly, in the state, there is state legislative assembly, which will have a speaker and deputy speaker. Similarly, there will be a state legislative council, which will have a chairman and deputy chairman, right? And in the center, the highest in the judiciary is the judges of Supreme Court. In the state, it's the judges of high courts and the CAG. Okay, now CAG is important because UPSC can replace CAG with election commission or someone else. Okay, so just remember these points. Okay, here we have said to increase the power of Supreme Court. If Parliament wants to increase the powers of Supreme Court, it can amend the constitution by a simple majority. Now think, if Parliament has to decrease the power of Supreme Court, if Parliament wants to decrease the power of Supreme Court, then which type of amendment will be required? Special majority or ratification also? Answer is none of these. To decrease, not increase, to decrease the power of Supreme Court, it simply cannot be done. No amendment can be made. Okay, so Parliament can increase powers of Supreme Court, Parliament cannot decrease the powers of Supreme Court. What is the logic here? Why can't Parliament decrease the powers of Supreme Court? Because this is our constitution. Constitution gives powers to three organs: the legislature, judiciary and executive. Okay, so one of them cannot restrict the powers of others. Okay, it is a constitution which is giving you the power or putting the restrictions. Amendment of constitution. So here a simple question can come that can the amendment of a constitution be done by an ordinance? No. See, if Parliament can make a law on something, right, then obviously the president can issue an ordinance also on that subject. However, amendment of constitution is an exception. Okay, by ordinance, president cannot amend the constitution. No joint sitting is permissible. President must give the assent. He can't withhold or return his assent. This was given in the 24th Amendment Act 1971. Okay, and can a private member present a bill to amend the constitution? Yes, of course. Even a private member can issue a bill. Okay, can bring forward a bill to amend the constitution, although there is very low probability that it will be passed, and the bill can be presented in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, any of the houses. Some recent amendments to the constitution: 101st was GST, 102nd amendment was about NCBC, giving the constitutional status to National Commission for Backward Classes. 103rd amendment was for 10% EWS quota, and 104th amendment was about the reservation in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. So the reservation for SC ST in Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies was initially given for 10 years, but after every 10 years the Parliament extends the reservation for another 10 years. So that's a very routine thing. But one special thing happened this time, that the reserved seat for two nominated members of Anglo-Indian community, that provision has been omitted, right? So no longer the Anglo-Indians will get nominated in the Lok Sabha. Basic structure. So the doctrine of basic structure is not written in the constitution. It was introduced by Supreme Court in Keshwanand Bharti case 1973. It is a very simple point, you all know this, but still UPSC can confuse you here. UPSC will say that the doctrine of basic structure was not written in the original constitution, correct? However, it was introduced by an amendment after 1973. That is wrong. After 1973, through an amendment, we have not inserted basic structure doctrine. Okay, even today in the constitution, basic structure doctrine is not written anywhere. It's a judicial innovation. Okay, so constitution has not been amended to accommodate this doctrine. So be careful about the language that UPSC is using. Judiciary decides what comes under basic structure. Okay, it is not the Parliament, it is a judiciary that decides what is basic structure and what is not. important point that is given in your NCERT is that National Commission to Review Working of Constitution 2002, also known as Venkatacharya Commission, it did not oppose the basic structure doctrine. Why is this point important? See, NCERT says that it is possible that some political parties would oppose this provision of basic structure, that it is not given in the constitution. How can a court restrict our powers, right? So here NCERT says that in the year 2000, the BJP government headed by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee, so he set up a commission, Venkatacharya Commission, to review the working of constitution. 2 years later, the commission gave the report, and even in that report, it did not oppose this basic structure. So here NCERT wants to say that all political parties have accepted this fact. Okay, so there is no scope for any hard feelings or anything like that. So basic structure is just like a basic structure of the building. If you disturb the basic structure, then the building will fall down. If you keep the occupants happy by painting and everything, that's okay. But if you damage the basic structure, no matter how beautiful your building is, it will come down. So what was the need of this basic structure doctrine? See, the need is simple. These are the people of India. We the people of India. We the people of India gave to ourselves a constitution. This constitution gave powers to three people: judiciary, executive, and legislature, right? So indirectly, we the people through the constitution have given power to these three people. Now this legislature has the power to amend the constitution, but does it have the power to change it unlimited, however and how much it wants? No. Constitution is a source of power of legislature. Legislature can amend constitution in a limited way. It has only limited powers. However, this limited power is not clearly written in the constitution. Therefore, to make it more clear, Supreme Court had to introduce this doctrine, the doctrine of basic structure. Right? This is the point I was explaining. Another reason is for this doctrine that if there is no basic structure, then there will be rule by law and not rule of law. What is the exact difference between the two? We will discuss this later. Acha, the basic structure doctrine, is it unique to India? No, it is not unique to India. Inspired by the Indian Supreme Court, some other countries' Supreme Court have also adopted this doctrine. For example, in 1989, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, and in 2015, the Supreme Court of Pakistan also adopted this doctrine of basic structure. UPSC can ask you that which of the following have been pronounced to be part of basic structure by the Supreme Court. So these are the correct answers, and few others also, but these are important ones: federalism, democracy, secularism, equality, rule of law, limited power of parliament to amend the constitution, just like I explained here. Okay, constitution gives power to legislature. Legislature cannot use this power to amend the constitution in an unlimited way. Independence of judiciary. So the National Judicial Appointment Commission, NJAC, which was brought by this government in the year 2015, it was struck down by the Supreme Court, saying that it is against independence of judiciary. Judicial review is a basic feature of constitution. Some powers of Supreme Court under these articles and power of high courts under these articles. Okay, now these are the articles. Actually, you don't have to remember these article numbers, but individual question can come that what is this article about? UPSC has already asked a question that what is article 142 about? Okay, so these are very simple things. Article 32 is, it's a part of your fundamental right, that if any of your fundamental rights get violated, then you can approach the Supreme Court. Article 136 says special leave petition except military tribunal and court martial. So if some court case is going on in any court and there are some exceptional scenario, then you can directly approach the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court may, in its discretion, give you a special leave and directly take over the case. Okay, so there are some special cases when Supreme Court exercises its discretion. Article 141, Supreme Court's decision is binding on all other courts. Article 142, to do complete justice in a case, Supreme Court can pass any order. Okay, so legislature makes the law and courts have to follow the law. Okay, courts decide that if something is being done, it is being done according to the law or against the law. So courts are in a way bound by the law, but sometimes following the law may not give complete justice, right? For such scenarios, Constitution has this provision 142 that to do complete justice, Supreme Court can pass any order. 226, the writ jurisdiction of high courts for fundamental right or other purpose, and Article 227, High Court has superintendence on courts or tribunals in its area. Now, one important thing is that the writ jurisdiction of High Court is wider than the writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court. How? See, Article 32 is a part of fundamental rights. Okay, but Article 226 is not a part of fundamental right. In Article 32 it is written that if your fundamental rights get violated, then you can approach Supreme Court. But in 226 it is written if your fundamental right or for other purpose also. Okay, here Supreme Court is issuing the writ for violation of fundamental right. Here High Court is issuing the writ for violation of fundamental right or other purpose, or other purpose means for legal purpose also. If your legal right is violated, think like this. If any of your legal right is violated, then you can approach High Court directly under Article 226, but not Supreme Court under Article 32. So the writ jurisdiction of High Court is wider than the writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court. Parliamentary system is a part of basic structure. It was quite in news because there have been many editorials saying that India should also adopt presidential type of system, just like USA. Separation of power. Okay, Constitution has given powers to 3 organs. One of the organs can't say that I have been elected by the people, so I am going to supersede the judiciary and the executive. You can't say like that. Okay. Harmony and balance between fundamental right and DPSP. All fundamental rights are not part of basic structure. Okay. All DPSP are not part of basic structure, but the harmony and balance between the two is necessary. Sometimes the government may amend or violate some of the fundamental right to give effect to some DPSP for welfare of the people. Similarly, sometime for welfare of the people, government can violate DPSP for fundamental right and vice versa, same thing. Okay, so in such a case, the Supreme Court in one such prior case has said that the harmony between the two is necessary. Okay, now it's a very vague phrase, that harmony and balance between the two, but such vague phrases are actually needed because you don't know that what kind of government we will get in future, right? And what kind of mischief the government may do. To struck down such mischiefs, it is necessary that some vague language is used so that Supreme Court can come in between in such laws. Okay, such laws can be challenged in the Supreme Court in the future. Free and fair elections and some many more things are part of basic structure. Keshwanand Bharti case. Your NCERT says that the Keshwanand Bharti case ruling has contributed to evolution of constitution in following ways. First thing is that through this case, judiciary has clearly said that there are specific limits to how much parliament can amend the constitution. Okay, the basic structure of the constitution cannot be violated. In this ruling, Supreme Court said that parliament can amend. Okay, parliament can amend any and all parts of the constitution. Any part of the constitution can parliament amend? Yes, it can amend, but with the limitation that the basic structure should not be interfered with. And who decides what is the basic structure? The judiciary decides. Okay. So Keshavanand Bharati was the head of Ednir Mutt of Kerala. Government was acquiring his property because the property of the Mutt for land reforms. He challenged this. He lost the case. But we got this wonderful ruling. It was a 13-judge bench, the largest ever. The judgment came on 24th April 1973, very important date, because this basic structure doctrine is applicable from this date. Any amendment done to the constitution prior to this date cannot be struck down on the basis that it violates the basic structure. Supreme Court upheld the 24th Amendment. So what is the 24th Amendment? See, main thing was that there was a dispute, like in Shankari Prasad case, Supreme Court said that Parliament can amend anything. In Sajjan Singh case, Supreme Court said that yes, Parliament can amend anything, but two of the judges gave dissenting judgment. They said that Constitution has some basic features which the Parliament cannot amend. Since these are only two judges and it was a 5-judge bench, so this could not become a part of the final judgment, but still the later court judgments in Golaknath case, in Keshavanand Bharati case, here the judges referred to this idea that constitution has some basic features. Okay, so therefore this case is very important. So why did Golaknath case happen? Government had made some law which violated fundamental right, and government had placed that law in the 9th schedule. Okay, so this thing was challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that Parliament cannot amend fundamental rights, and it was a big bench. It was an 11-judge constitution bench. Such a big bench said that Parliament cannot amend the fundamental rights. Now obviously Parliament got infuriated and government brought 24th Amendment in 1971, which clearly said that Parliament can amend fundamental right. So UPSC can give you a question that through which amendment was it brought that Parliament can amend fundamental right? It was brought by the 24th Amendment. Okay, so in Keshavanand Bharati case, what happened was that Supreme Court said yes, 24th Amendment is correct. Parliament can amend fundamental right. Okay, so Supreme Court upheld the 24th Amendment. Parliament can take away your fundamental rights, but it is subject to the basic structure doctrine. And what is basic structure will be decided by the judiciary. Right to property is not part of basic structure. Okay, Keshavanand Bharati lost the case. Preamble is a part of constitution. So these are the things, major things that Supreme Court said in this case. It can come as which of the following are correct, which of the following are said by the Supreme Court. Question can come like this. In 1975, 42nd Amendment, also called as the mini constitution, Parliament said that Parliament can amend any article of the constitution. In Minerva Mills case 1980, Supreme Court said that Parliament has limited amending power. Okay, same thing that I explained earlier. This is constitution. These are the people of India. People through the constitution have given limited powers to judiciary, executive and legislature. The legislature has limited power. Legislature cannot use these limited powers to get unlimited power and do anything to the constitution that it wants. Okay, think like this, that you have got the Aladdin ka chirag, the jinn, you have got the jinn, okay, and the jinn is giving you 3 wishes, 1, 2, 3. You make the 2 wishes, then on the 3rd wish you say that my 3rd wish is that I should get unlimited wishes. This is cheating. Okay, you can't say like this. So similarly, you were granted limited number of wishes. You cannot use the limited number of wishes to get unlimited wishes. So Parliament has been given limited power. It cannot use this limited power to get unlimited power and amend the constitution however it wants. Okay, that was Minerva Mills case. In Vaman Rao case 1981, Supreme Court said that the basic structure doctrine does not apply retrospectively. That is what I explained here, that before this date, if any amendment was done, that cannot be challenged on the basis of violating the basic structure. 9th schedule. So the 9th schedule was added by the first amendment 1951 and article 31B also, obviously. Okay, so article 31b says that whatever law is there in the ninth schedule, it can't be challenged in court. See, the original constitution had 8 schedules. Okay, it had 8 schedules. Now, right to property in the original constitution was a fundamental right, but government wanted to do land reforms. To give effect to land reforms, obviously someone's property will have to be taken over, so the right to property will be violated. So the government brought the solution that in the 8 schedules we should also add one more schedule, schedule number 9. Okay, and when we make a law, if we fear that that law will be contested in the courts, then what we will do is in the 9th schedule we will write the name of the law. Okay, we will write the name of the laws in the 9th schedule. Once the name of a law has been written in the 9th schedule, it cannot be challenged in the courts for violation of fundamental right, constitution, and etc. other things. So that is the idea behind this. Now, one thing you should remember is that in 9th schedule, state laws can also be written. Okay, not just a central laws, state laws can also be inserted, but obviously it is a parliament that is going to insert. Tomorrow if Haryana brings a law, ठीक है, तो Haryana cannot insert that law in the 9th schedule. Central government, the parliament will insert in the 9th schedule that law of Haryana. Initially this schedule had 13 laws, today it has 284 laws. Prelims 2003, 9th schedule was added by first amendment. I.R. Coelho case 2007, it is also known as the 9th schedule case. In this case, Supreme Court said that the laws mentioned in the 9th schedule are not immune to judicial review because judicial review is a part of basic structure. You are saying that we have made 9th schedule, laws written here cannot be challenged in the courts. Supreme Court is saying of course they can be challenged. How can you stop us from reviewing the laws? Because judicial review is a part of basic structure, you can't change it. Okay, so Supreme Court said, see, if any law is placed in 9th schedule, we can declare it unconstitutional provided it violates fundamental right and it violates the basic structure. Okay. Prelims 2018 question. Parliament can place a particular law in 9th schedule? Yes, Parliament can place a law in the 9th schedule, correct. Validity of a law in 9th schedule cannot be examined by any court. Wrong. Okay, that is given in the I.R. Coelho case. So 2 is wrong, 1 is correct. Prelims 2019, 9th schedule was introduced during Prime Ministership of Nehru. It was 1951, first amendment. Article 13 and judicial review. Judicial review concept we took from which constitution? US Constitution. Your NCERT says that judicial review is the most important power of Supreme Court. It means that Supreme Court or High Courts, okay, High Courts also have this power. They can examine the constitutionality of any law. Fine. So if legislature makes a law, then it is a duty of judiciary to see that this law does not violate the constitution. Fine. So which of the following is the custodian of Indian Constitution? Supreme Court. Supreme Court is a custodian of constitution. It is its responsibility to see that executive or legislature does not violate the constitution. Article 13, very interesting. Article 13, it says that law that takes away any fundamental right shall be void. Okay, so question UPSC can ask is, does India have judicial review? Yes, there is a provision of judicial review. From which constitution did we took it? We took it from US Constitution. Which article says that India has judicial review? Article 13. Okay, Article 13 of the Constitution says that there is judicial review. However, the words judicial review, the words are not used in the Constitution. It is implicit in Article 13. How? Article 13 says, law that takes away fundamental right shall be void. Okay, a law which is violating fundamental right will be void. Now, who is going to declare that I certify this law is violating the fundamental rights? hence we are striking it down. You have to give this power, na? So this power is given to Supreme Court by Article 32 and to High Courts by Article 226. Okay, so even High Courts can strike down central laws. Okay, think of a small High Court, let's say High Court of Meghalaya. High Court of Meghalaya can strike down the law made by the Parliament of India. Fine, so High Courts are very powerful. Another important thing, Article 32 empowers Supreme Court to strike down laws. It also binds Supreme Court to do so. How does it bind Supreme Court? Because Article 32 itself is a fundamental right. So if you as an individual go to Supreme Court and say that, sir, my fundamental right has been violated by such and such law, then Supreme Court cannot refuse, because it is your right, it is a fundamental right that Supreme Court will have to hear and strike down that law. Now, the law that takes away your fundamental right shall be void. What is law? It can be anything. It can be a central law, state law, any ordinance, any rules, regulation, order made by the government, anything. Is constitutional amendment a law? So in the original constitution, nothing like that was written. In the 24th amendment, we inserted this line in Article 13. Constitution amendment is not law. Okay, we are saying that if a law violates fundamental right, then it shall be void. Here we are saying constitutional amendment is not a law. That means constitutional amendment can violate fundamental right. Okay, this was given in the 24th amendment, and in Kesavananda Bharati case, Supreme Court said yes, it is correct. Constitutional amendment is not a law, therefore constitutional amendment can take away your fundamental right. However, subject to basic structure. Prelims 2017. What is the meaning of judicial review? Judicial review means that courts can pronounce on the constitutionality of the law and executive orders. Okay. Some people got confused with B option. Power of judiciary to question wisdom of the laws. No. Wisdom of the laws, you can't look into this. Okay. So if government brings a law which may bring some loss to the government, okay, which is not about the fundamental rights, that is not about the constitutionality. So Supreme Court can't say that your law has is not good enough, let's make it better, okay, or bring a better law. You can't say like that without saying that it is violating the constitution. Supreme Court's work is to see whether the constitution is being violated, not how intelligent or whether it's a good law or a bad law, anything like that. Okay, the wisdom of the laws is not being challenged here, cannot be challenged. Although if I tell you something like the wisdom of the laws is actually challenged sometimes. For example, in 2014 I think there was this coal scam case. So their Supreme Court, the coal scam case and the 2G scam case, okay, so their Supreme Court said that the natural resources have to be compulsorily auctioned. Okay, government had the policy that coal or telecom services, 2G, the 2G of telecom services is very basic thing, even the poor people need it. If we go for auctioning, then the prices will increase, right? So government took a decision that we are not going to give these things by auction. Supreme Court said that if you are not doing the auction, then there will be loss to the government, loss of revenue, which we cannot permit. So all natural resources you have to give away them by auctioning only. So here Supreme Court was questioning the wisdom of the laws, right? So ideally that should not have been done, but still Supreme Court did it. Anyways, you have to just follow what the law says. Law says that constitutionality is something that the Supreme Court looks into. So actually theoretical things and practical things are quite different. Prelims 2019. With reference to constitution, no high court shall have jurisdiction to declare central law invalid. This is wrong. High courts can declare central laws as invalid. Amendment of constitution cannot be called into question. This is wrong. If you amend the constitution, it can be challenged in the courts. So both statements are wrong. Prelims 2020. Consider the following statements. Constitution defines what is basic structure. No. Constitution does not define what is basic structure. Constitution has a basic structure, but that is given by the Supreme Court, not the Constitution itself. Constitution provides for judicial review, yes. Article 13, 1(3), Article 13 does not use the word judicial review, but it provides for judicial review. That is correct. USA president impeached twice. So Trump has become the first and only till date president of USA that has been impeached twice. In US, the president can be impeached for treason, bribery, high crimes or misdemeanors. It is the lower house that initiates the charges. In India, president is impeached for violating the constitution under Article 61. 1/4 of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha MPs sign the charges. Right? So here initiation is in either Lok Sabha in the lower house or the upper house. However, in USA only the lower house can initiate the charges. In India, a 14 days notice is to be given to the president. In the house in which these charges were framed, the charges were signed, the resolution has to be passed by 2/3 of the total membership. In US, it has to be simple majority. Okay. Now, once the lower house has passed the resolution by simple majority, the president stands impeached in USA, but not in India, because the meaning of impeachment is different. In India, when we say that the president has been impeached, we mean to say that president has been removed. But in USA, first impeachment happens. Then if the upper house also passes a resolution by 2/3 majority, then we say that the president will be removed. So Trump was not removed, he was only impeached. In India, when we say impeach, it means the person has been removed. In India, the other house will also pass by 2/3 majority, and then the president stands impeached. Okay. So this is showing the comparison between India and USA. In India, we have a parliament. Okay, the parliament of USA is called as the US Congress. The parliament of India is housed in a building. The name of this building is Sansad Bhavan. The name of the building which houses the US Congress is Capitol Building. Fine. Our lower house is Lok Sabha. Their lower house is House of Representatives. It is housed here. Our upper house is Rajya Sabha. Their upper house is the Senate, which is housed here. Right. The current parliament building, okay, it was designed inspired by the Chausat Yogini temple of Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so there is a Chausat Yogini temple. Inspired from that, this building was designed. However, the new building, which is something like a triangle, something like this. Okay, some people say it looks like a pentagon, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know the inspiration behind this. So some features borrowed from the US Constitution are fundamental rights, the post of the Vice President, independence of judiciary, the judicial review, removal of the president, Supreme Court and High Court judges. In prelims 2005, a question came. The Constitution of USA came into force in 1810. This is wrong. That was 1789. Okay, the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776 and the Constitution came into force in 1789. Second option, we don't know. Third option, Bush is the only president whose father was also a president. So this is wrong, because see, in 2005, Bush was elected for the second time. Okay, so at that time, perhaps this fact would have been in news that it is not the first time that a son has been made the president. Earlier, the 6th president of USA, his father was also a president of the USA. Similarly, with the case with George Bush. Till now, 3 presidents of USA have been impeached. 1868 Andrew Johnson, 1998 Clinton, and 2019 Trump. But no one has been removed so far. The President of India, he is a part of the executive. The Union executive consists of which of the following? Answer is President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers and Attorney General. Okay. President is also part of Parliament. Okay, the Parliament of India consists of three things: the President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Fine. President is not part of Lok Sabha, President is not part of Rajya Sabha, but he is part of Parliament. President is not head of government. Head of government is Prime Minister. The head of government is, the head of state is President. Okay, President is head of state. In USA, the President is both head of state as well as head of government, because there is presidential system. However, India follows parliamentary system. In parliamentary system, there is dual executive. We have two executives in a parliamentary system. There is one head of state and there is another head of government. So there is dual executive in parliamentary system. All executive actions of the government of India, of the union government, are taken in the name of the president, not in the name of prime minister. In 2014, UPSC gave the statement that all union executive actions are taken in the name of prime minister. Fine, so that option was wrong. Qualifications: he should be a citizen of India. In USA, there is an additional condition that he should be citizen by birth. In 2008 elections, when Obama was running for the presidentship, then the opposition people, they had spread a rumor that Obama is not a citizen. He is not a citizen by birth. However, he was. But it is how politics work. Okay, you put unsubstantiated allegations against the opponents. The age, at least 35 years age. He should be qualified for Lok Sabha election. No office of profit. There should be 50 electors, each as proposer and seconders. Rupees 15,000 have to be deposited with RBI and they are forfeited if 1/6 votes are not obtained. Election of the President of India. The most important thing here is that who all are included in the electoral college. The elected MPs and MLAs. That is a simple thing. Okay. Any of the elected MP and any of the elected MLAs. Fine. And all. Okay. All elected MPs and all elected MLAs. And when we say all elected MLAs, then it also includes the MLAs of Delhi and Puducherry. Who is not a part of electoral college? Nominated MP or MLA, member of legislative council in the states, and MLA of dissolved assembly. Voting is not by FPTP, it is by proportional representation by single transferable vote. This single transferable vote ensures that whoever is a president has won by absolute majority. That is, at least 50% votes he has won. In the Lok Sabha election, MPs win by FPTP system, where even by winning 25 or 30% votes, a person becomes an MP and we can get the Prime Minister. But the President gets by absolute majority due to proportional representation system. Voting is by secret ballot. Election Commission of India conducts the voting for the President and Vice President. The returning officer is the Secretary General of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha by rotation. Any disputes, they are inquired and decided by the Supreme Court and its order is final and binding. And suppose a person got elected, a person became the president on 1st of January. Okay. And on 1st of February, Supreme Court says that this person, there was something problem in the elections or he is not eligible to the president. Okay, something happens and Supreme Court says that now this person has to step down. So what about the decisions or the actions that the person took during January? Will they be void? No, they will not be void. Okay. President takes oath to preserve, protect and defend the Constitution. The oath is given by the Chief Justice of India or in his absence, the senior most judge of Supreme Court. The term of the president is 5 years. Once 5-year term ends and we don't have a new president, then who will work as the president? Will the vice president work? No. The current president will continue to work as the president until his successor assumes office. He resigns not to Chief Justice. Okay, he's given oath. President is given oath by Chief Justice, but he resigns to the vice president. Once president, see, this is a president, this is a vice president. Once president resigns to vice president, the vice president has to immediately inform the Speaker of Lok Sabha. Okay, VP informs Lok Sabha Speaker. A person can become president any number of times. However, in USA, a person can become president only only for 2 terms, that is 8 years maximum. Impeachment of the president for violation of constitution, but it is not defined. For proven misbehavior, no. Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha MPs, both of them, all Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha MPs participate in his impeachment process. The nominated MPs did not take part in his election. Okay, see, nominated MPs and MLAs, they did not take part in his election, but nominated MPs are part of his impeachment proceedings, and no MLA is involved. Immunity. So president has taken some action, some official action he has taken, and someone goes to the court. So can that individual who is the president of India, can any action be taken against him? No. He has personal immunity from legal liability. Okay. So suppose Ramnath Kovind, take our president, suppose he takes some action, okay, some official action. So whatever is the liability of president of India, the post of president of India, not that individual person's liability. Okay. Now there are also some personal acts. There are some actions which are not part of the duty of the president. Still, that individual who is sitting in the chair of president, he may do some wrong things. Okay. For such wrong things, as long as that person is in office, criminal proceedings cannot be initiated. However, civil proceedings can be initiated, but only after giving 2 months notice. And even if he is found guilty, he cannot be arrested or imprisoned. Okay. If there is a vacancy in the office, then the vice president acts as the president. In the absence of vice president, it is the Chief Justice of India. In his absence, it is the senior most judge of Supreme Court. Elections have to be held within 6 months. So if there is a vacancy, right? So the president had a term of 5 years. 5 years are over. Now there is a vacancy. So vice president will come over. Wrong. Vacancy means by death, resignation, something like that. Okay. It is not due to expiry of term. If there is expiry of term, then the current president continues until other successor comes. One special thing is about Mr. Muhammad Hidayatullah. He is the only person in India who has served as the president as well as vice president as well as chief justice. During 1968-70, he was a chief justice. During that time, I think the president expired. He died in office and the vice president took over. But the vice president resigned. Therefore, the Chief Justice of India acted as the president. Now, 10 years later in 1979, all political parties had consensus that he should be made the vice president. So he acted as a vice president for 5 years. During this time, the president went to USA for medical treatment and therefore he could not discharge his duties. During that time also, he acted as the president. So he acted as president twice, and the only person who served as all three things. Important point is that president is impeached for violation of constitution, but the Supreme Court and High Court judges are removed for proven misbehavior or incapacity. So here UPSC can interchange the sentences, right? Prelims 2018. Consider the following statements. No criminal proceedings shall be instituted against governor. Okay, criminal proceedings. We are talking about governor, but the point is almost same. So criminal proceedings, no. Criminal proceedings cannot be proceeded. Okay. Emoluments and allowances of governor shall not be diminished during his term of office. This point is true for almost everyone. Okay, be it your president or even constitutional posts like CAG, UPSC chairman, Election Commissioner of India. Once a person takes the office during his term, his emoluments or allowances cannot be decreased. 1997 prelims question. President shall not be a member of either house. Yes, president is not a part of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Parliament shall consist of president and 2 houses. Yes, just like I explained earlier. 1996. Which one of the following is part of electoral college for president but not the forum for his impeachment? The MLAs. Okay, the MLAs take part in president's election, but not in his impeachment. His impeachment is done by the MPs. The formula about the value of vote of an MLA or MP, these are not important for your prelims. You can ignore them. Prelims 2018, election of the president. The value of the vote of each MLA varies from state to state. Okay, and so this is actually true. How is it true? See, he is the president. How is the president elected? So 50% weightage goes to the union, that is the MPs, and 50% weightage goes to the states. Okay, half the president is from the MPs and half the president is from the states. Now in the states, each state has equal value. Okay, mind my words. Each state, this is the one state number one, this is state number two. Okay, so president is made by states. All states have equal value. Think of our Rajya Sabha. In Rajya Sabha, all states don't have equal value, right? Some states have more number of seats, some states have less number of seats. But in the US upper house, each state has exactly equal number of seats. So there is parity. Now here in the case of president's election, there is parity between each state, right? But the value of the vote of MLA will change. Why? Because every state has a different number of MLAs. Suppose here it is a big state, like say UP, this is Uttar Pradesh, and this is like a small state, let us say Sikkim. Okay, so the value of votes of UP in president's election is same as the value of votes of Sikkim. But here there are too many MLAs and here there are too few MLAs. So therefore the value of vote of each MLA or from different state, it varies, it is not the same. Right? So think like this, that president equally represents the union, this is a part of union, and he also the union and the states, okay, equally, and he equally represents all the states. Okay, so remember like this, there is parity between the union and states, there is parity between different states, but there is no parity between MP and MLA, and there is no parity between MLAs of different states. Pardoning power of the president. So it is not really his discretionary power. He is bound by the advice of the union cabinet. This is not true in the USA. Okay, in the USA, the president can act on his own. It's an executive power. It is independent of judiciary. President does not sit as a court of appeal. Okay, so suppose you file a case in the lower court. Okay, from lower court you go to high court. From high court you make an appeal to the Supreme Court. From Supreme Court you make an appeal to the higher court, that is the President of India. No, this does not happen. Okay, so President is not sitting as a superior court over the Supreme Court. No, he is not a court of appeal. It's a different thing. Okay, this is judiciary. Till here it is judiciary. Lower court, high court, Supreme Court. Now President is a separate thing. Okay, President is not part of judiciary. So from judiciary, if you're not happy, you can go to the other organ, that is the President. Fine. So president does not sit as a court of appeal. His decision can be challenged in court if it is arbitrary, irrational, malefied, discriminatory. Normally we say that the decision of the president here is not subject to judicial review. However, Supreme Court has said that if the decision is discriminatory or something like this, malefied, वगैरह, तो फिर in that case it can be challenged in the Supreme Court. President uses this power. When can a president use his pardoning powers? When a person broke the union law, not the state law. Okay. However, if a person has got death sentence, it doesn't matter whether the death sentence is by a union law or a state law. A death sentence a person has got, that person can approach the president. When the punishment is by a military court, okay, if a person has got punishment by a military court, then he can certainly approach the president for his pardoning powers. A small comparison can come between the powers of president and governor. Learn the articles 72 and 161. If you break a union law, go to the president. If you break a state law, go to the governor. Court martial, only the president. You can approach the president, not the governor. If there is a death sentence, president can pardon as well as commute, but the governor can only commute, he cannot pardon. Now what is this pardon, commute? Let's learn this. Pardon means भूल जाओ जो हुआ. Forgiveness. Someone did something against you, but you are like God. Okay, you say कि I am pardoning you, I am forgiving you, I will forget whatever you have done. ठीक है. So we are friends again, just like earlier days. I will assume that you never did the crime. Okay, so here we are removing the conviction. See, suppose there is a case that this person, okay, this person did a murder. Okay, this is a case. So in stage 1, court will say whether this person has done the murder or not. Suppose court says that yes, he has done the murder, he is a convict, he is convicted of the crime. Once the conviction is ensured, then in the second stage the court will say that how many years punishment he should get. Okay, so sentencing will be done. First conviction is done, then sentencing is done. When we say we have pardoned the person, president is pardoned, that means the conviction is also nullified. Here we are not saying that you got 10 years imprisonment, so now you don't have to be in the jail. We are also saying that you never did the crime. For example, if you got disqualified, you wanted to fight an election and you got disqualified because you were sentenced to some jail. Since the conviction will be reversed, therefore now you will be again qualified to fight the election. Right? So that is a special thing about pardon. Commutation. So pardon is like God pardons. Learn like this, that God gives his forgiveness. He can erase our past deeds. That is pardon. Next is commutation. How to learn commutation? Commutation and commute words are similar. So a court sentenced a person to death, but a police van came and he was commuted. The police van was sent by the President of India. President sent and said that we are transferring you to the jail. That means we are replacing a hard punishment with a lighter one, like jail instead of hanging. Okay, someone was sentenced to rigorous imprisonment. Then the president says no, instead of rigorous imprisonment, we will give him simple imprisonment. So you are changing the nature of the punishment. This is commute. You are commuting. Learn like this. You will never forget. Remission. Now remission word is similar to remittance. Now think of an old mother in India. She gets money from her son who is in USA. That is remittance. So son makes sure that he sends money every month to his mother. Fine. But the amount of money may vary. Her expenses will vary. So he sends sometimes less, sometimes more. ठीक है ना? So that is about remittance. Amount is reduced, but the character is same. He is sending the money, na? He is sending Indian rupees. It is not that this month he is sending rupees, next month he will send dollars, then he will send euros. No. The character will remain the same, that it is rupees, but the amount will change. So someone got 2 years jail. Sorry, someone got 5 years jail. Now it will be reduced to 2 years jail. If you change the nature of jail, the nature of imprisonment, then it will be commutation. Respite. How to learn what is respite? P-I-T-E. Pity. Learn like this. Respite means pity. Just for the remembering purpose. Okay. P-I-T-E. Pity. So you feel pity for someone. Like maybe there is a lady who is pregnant, or there is a person who is physically handicapped. So due to some special circumstances, some special fact, you feel pity and you lower the punishment. Reprieve. Reprieve, the last 3 words are eve. Eve, evening. Okay, think like this, that a person has to be hanged tomorrow, and in the night, in the evening, he goes to Supreme Court that please save me because I want to appeal to the president, or there is some special fact that has been overlooked, I need some time to appeal, please give me some temporary time. Okay, so such things are done the night before you are hanging. So you are getting the reprieve. Okay, give time to seek pardon. For example, temporarily suspending the hanging. So learn these things through these diagrams. You will never forget them. Official language. The Chief Justice of India recommended that government should include more languages in governance. So the case is simple. Government brought the draft EIA notification. The draft EIA notification was published only in English and Hindi. Delhi High Court said that you should publish it in other languages also, so that people can read them and understand them. The petitioner said that, for example, in 2010, when government brought draft coastal regulation zone notification, then government published this notification in all the nine, not all, but in the nine coastal languages. So same thing should be done now. Okay, although the final notification was published only in English and Hindi, but to get opinion from the public, it was published in different languages. Same appeal was made for draft EIA also, but government is saying no, we will publish the draft norms only in English and Hindi. So CJI said that you should try to include more languages as well. So which is our Rashtra Bhasha, national language? Nothing. People have this misconception that Hindi is the national language of India. No, that is wrong. There is no national language. There is only official language. The official language of the Union is Hindi and English. Constitution says that Hindi in Devanagari script is the official language of Union, but the numbers that we use 1, 2, 3, 4, that is not in Devanagari script. Okay, numbers are just like in the international system. English will continue as the official language of the Union till 1965, but Parliament has the power to extend the use of English beyond 1965. Okay, that is written in the Constitution itself. Official Language Act of 1963. Using this act, Parliament extended the use of English. See, Constitution gave the power to Parliament. So here, through this act, Parliament exercised its power to extend the use of English for official purpose indefinitely, not for 10 years. What is the official language of states? That the states are free to decide. What is the official language of the courts? Just remember that in the lower court, it is a local language, but in the high courts and Supreme Court, it is English. However, if Parliament wants that in Supreme Court, Hindi should also be permitted, then the Parliament can make a law, right? Similarly, in a high court, if the government wants that some local language has to be used, then the state legislature can make a law. That is allowed. However, Parliament has not used this power. Therefore, Supreme Court works only in English. If you want to petition or appeal in the Supreme Court, only English is permitted. Supreme Court has earlier refused to hear petition in Hindi. Official Language Commission. It is not important for prelims. Still, you can hear it just for 2 minutes. Constitution says, in the 1950 we got the Constitution. Constitution said that Hindi will be the official language. However, for 15 years you can use English. So Constitution said that before 15 years also, that is in 1955 and 60, President should appoint a commission. The work of this commission is to increase the use of Hindi and reduce the use of English, right? And whatever this commission recommends, that will be examined by a parliamentary committee. So in 1955, this commission was appointed under B.G. Kher. In 1957, to study its recommendation, a parliamentary committee was formed under G.B. Pant. However, in 1960, a commission should have been appointed, but it was not appointed. Fine. Instead, what happened? In 1963, government brought the Official Language Act. Now, under this act said that once this act comes into force, after 10 years, a committee of the parliament will be formed. Right? So, this act came into force in 1965. Okay. 10 years later, in 1976, the committee of parliament was formed. Its purpose is to increase the use of Hindi for official purpose in Union. It has 30 members, 20 from Lok Sabha and 10 from Rajya Sabha. The chairman is chosen from the members among themselves. However, it is a convention that the Union Home Minister is chosen as its chairman. Two important constitutional provisions on Hindi. Article 343 says that Hindi is the official language. Article 351 says it is a duty of the Union to promote Hindi. A special officer for linguistic minorities. His official designation is Commissioner for Linguistic Minorities. He is appointed by the president under Article 350B. This was inserted by the 7th Amendment 1956. So when the states were reorganized in 1956 on linguistic basis, then obviously there was a danger that if states are being formed on linguistic basis, then what about the linguistic minorities? Who will look after them? Therefore, this article was inserted that for linguistic minorities, there should be a special officer or a commissioner. His qualification, tenure, salary, etc. are not mentioned in the constitution. He works under Ministry of Minority Affairs. Earlier, his headquarters was in Allahabad, but since 2015, his headquarters is in Delhi. Your Lakshmikant has still not updated this fact. In 1969, we made a Central Institute of Indian Languages to promote Indian languages. It comes under Ministry of Education. In 1979, under Home Ministry, we made a Department of Official Language. Its work is to promote use of Hindi in official work in the Union. Scheduled languages. India has scheduled languages. How many? 22. Okay. So originally there were 14, but then later we added 8 languages. So there is a prelims question of 2008 that which constitutional amendment added 4 languages to the 8th schedule? It was the 92nd Constitution Amendment Act 2003. Fine. You can learn the name of the language simple. In my opinion, you don't need to learn all the 22 names. Rather, something that UPSC can test, in my opinion, are these languages. Sanskrit, Urdu, Nepali, Kashmiri. These are given in the 8th schedule. However, English, Haryanvi, Ladakhi and Rajasthani are not given in the 8th schedule because often there is demand to include Rajasthani and Haryanvi in 8th schedule, but because they are currently not there in that schedule. Fine. So this is something that UPSC can test. According to Census 2011, there are 121 mother tongues in India. Of them, 22 are in the 8th schedule. 43% of people have Hindi as their first language. But when we say Hindi, we include all the dialects. For example, Haryanvi. See, the Hindi that we speak in Delhi is quite different from the Hindi that we speak in Haryana. Okay, sometimes people even cannot understand what the person is saying. Okay, so when we include all the dialects of Hindi, then we can say that 43% people speak in Hindi. Classical languages. The concept of classical languages was introduced in the year 2004. UPSC can say like this, that a constitution article such and such has provisions on classical languages. So there is nothing like that. Okay, so the classical languages, there are 6. Tamil in 2004, Sanskrit 2005, Telugu 2008, Kannada 2008, Malayalam 2013 and Odia 2014. What are the benefits? They get some financial assistance and 2 annual awards for scholars. Criteria, it should be quite old, at least 1500 years old, and the texts should be valuable. Okay, you can't say that there is an ancient language, so let's make it the classical language. No, it should be considered valuable also, and it should be original and not borrowed. Fine. So there may be discontinuity also. For example, suppose Tamil. Okay, we say that Tamil is an ancient language, so that's true. Okay, but you can't say, you can't argue that we should not make Tamil as a classical language because the Tamil that existed 2000 years ago is not the same Tamil that we speak today. You can't give such an argument. Okay, it is obvious, it is written here that it is obvious that there will be some discontinuity, and that is allowed. Fine. So there is this All India Radio News that Hindi is the 3rd most spoken language in the world. Okay, so most spoken language in the world is English, then Mandarin, then Hindi. Another Indian language that comes on this list is Bengali. Okay, on number 7. So in 2008, UPSC asked, among the Indian languages, which one is spoken maximum in the world after Hindi? So after Hindi it is Bengali. Okay, so this fact was true in the year 2008, and it is also true today also. See, it is not, Bangla has been ranked as 7th most spoken language in the world. Another thing, linguistic reorganization of states. So right after independence, there was a huge demand to reorganize states based on linguistic basis, because Britishers never cared for this. All they wanted was efficient administration. So here, government instituted a S.K. Dhar Commission, Linguistic Provinces Commission. Dhar Commission said that no, we should not reorganize states on linguistic basis. We should reorganize states based on administrative convenience. So there was obviously protest. So then Congress made a committee. Okay, so Dhar Commission was by Government of India, but then Congress made a committee, that was JVP committee. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, and Pattabhai Sitaramaiah. This JVP committee also rejected the linguistic basis for state reorganization. There were widespread protests. In October 1953, government was forced due to protest to create the first linguistic state of Andhra Pradesh. In December 1953, government appointed State Reorganization Commission. Okay, so most of the students get confused between these two terms, Linguistic Provinces Commission and State Reorganization Commission. Okay, so you should remember that when are we reorganizing the states? Okay, that will come later. First there is linguistic demand, then there is state reorganization. Learn like this. So State Reorganization Commission under Fazl Ali. Fazl Ali was a chairman and two other members were K.M. Panikkar and H.N. Kunzru. It said that to reorganize the states there should be 4 factors, and among those 4 factors, one of the factors is language. Government accepted the recommendation of this commission. Hence, on 1st November 1956, 14 states and 6 UTs were created by the State Reorganization Act 1956 and the 7th Amendment Act 1956. Okay, so UPSC can ask you that through which constitutional amendment were the states reorganized? The answer is 7th. 1960, Bombay was divided into Maratha speaking Maharashtra and Gujarati speaking Gujarat. In 1966, Punjab was divided into Punjab, Chandigarh and Haryana on the recommendation of Shah Commission. OBC subcategorization. So around 3 years ago, government formed a commission under G. Rohini, Justice G. Rohini, under Article 340. Okay, so Article 340 says that President will appoint a commission to investigate the condition of socially and educationally backward classes. The commission will submit the report to the President, who will cause the report to be laid in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So under Article 340, earlier also President had appointed some commissions. For example, in 1953, the first Backward Classes Commission was appointed under Kaka Kalelkar. In 1979, second Backward Classes Commission was appointed under BP Mandal, popularly known as Mandal Commission. And in 2017, President appointed G. Rohini Commission for subcategorization of OBC. Why? Why subcategorization of OBCs? Because many of the OBCs are not getting the representation. See, till now, government has the commission has found that reservation benefits are not reaching the poor OBCs. In the central list of OBC, there are 2633 castes, but 97% of the benefit is taken only by the 25% caste, and there are around 980 castes which have zero representation. For example, these are the total seats that have to be filled in a recruitment process. Now these are 27% of the seats reserved for OBC. Now these 27% seats are taken over. Of these 27% seats, 97% of the benefits, okay, almost everything is taken up by 25% of the caste. These are OBCs. Okay, so of these OBCs, only 25% are taking up 97% of the benefits. Okay, and there are around 980 castes in OBCs. center list which have zero representation, which have got zero benefits of this reservation. Why is this happening? Is it a latest phenomena? Is it restricted only to OBCs? No. See, this is our society. In our society, there is any recruitment, then there are some seats reserved for SC, some seats reserved for ST, and so on. Now, when a seat is reserved for SC, and these are SCs, these are scheduled caste. Now, obviously, there are some rich scheduled caste people, there are some poor, there are some very, very poor. This is true for everyone, SC, ST, OBC general. Now, when SC seats are reserved, who among these SC will be more placed, more suitable, more able to get these admission into this thing? Obviously the rich SC, right? Because they can afford the expensive coachings also. They don't have to work, they don't have to go to far away place to fetch water, right? So obviously money has an important role in our selection process. That is a bitter truth. Now, so these seats are filled by mostly by the rich SC. The newspaper reports that we read that rickshaw वाले के बेटे ने SC ये exam crack कर लिया, those are exceptional cases. Okay, that is not the norm. Same is true for ST also. Same is true for OBC also. However, in OBC we have a creamy layer concept. In creamy layer concept we say that the rich OBCs won't be allowed to fill these reserved seats. यानी कि OBC's reservation is compulsorily filled only by the poor OBC. So over a period of time, these people will benefit and more OBCs will become rich. But the poor SC and the poor ST will always remain there and remain, I'm sorry to say, but a vote bank of all the politicians. In general category also, we are reserving seats for the poor people through EWS. Right, so even general category, the situation of general category will also become better with time, but not of SC and ST. That is the concept of creamy layer. Here we are removing the creamy layer, here we are not removing, so creamy layer is taking away all the benefits. So to ensure that even in OBC, see, we are talking about subcategorization of OBC. So what here government is saying is कि already we have removed the creamy layer in OBC. Already the poor people are getting, only the poor OBC are getting the benefits. But in poor also government wants that the poorest of the poor, the most backward of the backward classes should get some special reservation in these seats itself. So government is working so hard for them. But okay, so here in fact Supreme Court had said that there should be creamy layer concept for SC ST so that the poor SC and the poor ST can grow up, can progress. But government said no, please reverse your judgment because we don't want that these people should get any such benefit. Okay, this is the official position of the government. I am not criticizing the government, I am just telling you that this is the government's official position. Question can come on the OBC reservation. In 1979, Mandal Commission, that is the second backward class commission, was appointed. Next year, it gave the recommendation that there should be 27% reservation for OBCs. In 1990, on 15th August, it was announced by the National Front government that OBCs will get 27% reservation. Okay, so basically, in between there was Congress rule in 1990. When the National Front government was formed, it said that 10 years ago, remember, there was a Mandal Commission report that said 27% reservation. So yes, we are going to implement it. We will give 27% reservation to jobs for OBCs in central government and PSUs. Immediately, Indira Sahni filed a case in the Supreme Court. Indira Sahni argued that if you want to measure backwardness, then caste is not a reliable indicator because in every caste there are rich people. If you want to give reservation, give on the basis of economic, on the financial situation of that person, not on the basis of caste. Okay, so Supreme Court stayed government's order. The case went on and the final judgment came in 1992. Here Supreme Court said that government is correct. Okay, government is correct. Government wants to give reservation on the basis of caste, it is allowed. But Supreme Court also said that government should exclude the creamy layer so that benefits reach only the poorer person and they can progress very fast. Okay. In 2006, reservation was extended to higher education also. This reservation, 27% OBC. Why? Because it was seen that government has given 27% reservation in jobs, okay, not in education. But there are not enough qualified candidates. You need some basic eligibility also, na? If a person never went to school or after 12th he had to go to work, okay, he had to earn money, he couldn't go to college, then how will he be eligible for a government job? So reservation in higher education was also necessary. Hence in 2006, this reservation was extended to higher education in for OBCs. National Commission for Backward Classes. So NCBC was established under this Act, NCBC Act 1993, under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. However, by the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act 2018, through Article 338B, it was given the status of a constitutional body. It has 5 members. President appoints those, decides their tenure, service condition, etc. Okay, so their appointment, their tenure and everything is not mentioned in the constitution. It is decided by the president. Its work is to examine the complaints and welfare of the OBCs and other things. Okay, so that's it for this class. Thank you very much. If you want to download the PDF of this file, the PDF is available from the link given in the description box of this video. Thank you.